May 23rd, 1945, Lüneburg Heath. British soldiers storm through a farmhouse and find Heinrich Himmler's daughter Gudrun, age 15, clutching a leather suitcase filled with her father's personal papers. The Reichsfuhrer SS has been dead for 17 days, cyanide dissolving on his tongue in Allied custody. But where do the children go when their fathers built the machinery of genocide? How do you live when your last name means mass murder? What becomes of the next generation when the 1,000-year Reich collapses in 12? For 12 years, the children of SS leadership lived as Nazi royalty. They attended elite schools, summered at confiscated estates, and learned that their fathers served a divine mission. Heinrich Himmler's Lebensborn program created breeding farms for Aryan children, while his Einsatzgruppen murdered over 1 million Jews in Eastern Europe. Reinhard Heydrich architected the final solution before an assassin's bomb tore through his Mercedes in Prague. Adolf Eichmann organized deportation trains that carried millions to death camps. Their children knew power, privilege, and the certainty that they belonged to a master race. Then came surrender, trials, and a reckoning that would scatter them across decades and continents. Gudrun Himmler becomes the first test case. Born August 8, 1929, she spent her childhood as puppy to the man who ordered the construction of Auschwitz. May 23, 1945, British intelligence arrests her alongside her mother, Margaret, at their Gmund hideout. The suitcase contains Heinrich Himmler's diaries, SS records, and personal photographs showing father and daughter at Nazi rallies. Interrogators place her in Württemberg detention camp for 2 years. No charges filed, no trial scheduled. The Allies face a problem with no precedent. How do you prosecute childhood proximity to evil? September 1947, Württemberg camp closes. Gudrun Himmler, now 18, walks free with altered papers listing her as Gudrun Berwitz. The British release files show she never renounced her father's ideology. December 1951, she marries Wolf Dieter Berwitz, a journalist who writes for far-right publications. They settle in Fürstenfeldbruck, 40 kilometers from Dachau concentration camp. Gudrun works as a seamstress, then as a secretary for Bavaria's construction authority. Her colleagues know nothing of her identity. The pattern emerges across occupied Germany. Children disappear into new names, new towns, new histories. Klaus Heydrich, son of the Butcher of Prague, turns 7 years old the day Czech resistance fighters throw Mills bombs into his father's Mercedes. June 4th, 1942. Reinhard Heydrich dies from shrapnel wounds and infection. The family flees Prague as Hitler burns Lidice village and executes 173 men in reprisal. Klaus, his sister Silke, and brother Heider hide with relatives in Bavaria. April 15th, 1945, U.S. forces arrest Lena Heydrich and her children at their Fehmarn Island retreat. Klaus spends 18 months in Allied detention, sharing barracks with children of other Nazi officials. October 1946, the family gains release under modified surnames. Klaus becomes Klaus Mantel. He moves to Tutzing, studies engineering at Munich Technical University, and graduates 1963 with honors in mechanical design. His professors never learn that their star student carries the genetic legacy of the architect who planned the Holocaust. Klaus designs agricultural machinery, marries a teacher named Ingrid, and fathers 2 sons. They live quietly in suburban Munich until Klaus suffers a heart attack in his garden on March 17, 1982. His death certificate lists no next of kin. The Eichmann children present a different trajectory. Adolf Eichmann flees Berlin on April 20th, 1945, abandoning his wife Vera and 4 sons, Klaus, age 9, Horst, age 7, Dieter, age 5, and Ricardo, age 2. Vera takes the children to her parents' home in Altaussee, Austria. May 1945, the U.S. Counterintelligence Corps arrests the family but releases them after 6 weeks. No evidence directly. Links Vera to her husband's deportation logistics. The boys grow up believing their father died in the war. Meri, Altaussee Registry Office. Vera Eichmann receives a letter postmarked Buenos Aires. Adolf has survived, established a new identity, has Ricardo Clement, and secured work at a Mercedes factory in Argentina. He requests the family join him. June 1952, Vera and the 4 boys board the ship Giovanna C. in Genoa. They carry Austrian passports listing them as the Clement family. The voyage takes 18 days. Buenos Aires, July 1952. The Eichmann boys discover their father alive in a cramped apartment at Chacabuco, 4261. Klaus, now 16, learns the truth about his father's wartime role. Adolf Eichmann explains his work as transportation coordination without mentioning the freight cars filled with deportees. The family speaks German at home, Spanish in public. Adolf works at Mercedes-Benz Argentina under his false identity. The boys attend German-Argentine schools and absorb the expatriate community's revisionist narratives about the war. Klaus Eichmann shows the first signs of rebellion against his father's legacy. 1958, he marries an Argentine woman and refuses to invite Adolf to the wedding. He tells friends his father worked in an office during the war and changes the subject when pressed for details. Klaus operates a small electrical repair shop in Buenos Aires and avoids the German social clubs where former Nazis gather to reminisce about the Reich. May 11th, 1960, Israeli Mossad agents seize Adolf Eichmann from a bus stop near his home. The operation, led by Agent Peter Malkin, takes 11 minutes from first contact to unconsciousness. Klaus Eichmann arrives home that evening to find broken furniture and his mother weeping in the kitchen. Argentine police file a missing person. Report: the family understands the implications when Israel announces Eichmann's capture 8 days later. The trial in Jerusalem transforms the children into global curiosities. April 11th, 1961, Adolf Eichmann sits in a bulletproof glass booth as prosecutor. Gideon Hausner reads charges for crimes against humanity. Television cameras broadcast the proceedings to 37 countries. Klaus watches from Buenos Aires as his father describes his logistics work in mechanical terms, denying personal responsibility for the deaths that followed his deportation orders. December 15th, 1961, the court sentences Adolf Eichmann to death. May 31, 1962, Israel executes him by hanging at Ramla prison. Guards scatter his ashes in international waters to prevent the creation of a Nazi shrine. The Eichmann sons fragment across continents. Klaus remains in Argentina, operating his repair shop and raising 3 children who know nothing of their grandfather's identity. Horst moves to Germany in 1963, studies chemistry, and works for a pharmaceutical company in Hamburg. He marries, fathers 2 daughters, and speaks publicly about rejecting his father's ideology. Dieter emigrates to the United States in 1968, changes his surname to Eckhart, and opens a restaurant in San Francisco. Ricardo, the youngest, joins the Argentine Air Force, serves as a helicopter pilot, and later works as a flight instructor in Cordoba. If you value documented WW and post-war history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Now back to the story. The children of lower-ranking SS officers follow different patterns of dispersal and reinvention. Martin Bormann Jr., son of Hitler's deputy and gatekeeper, experiences privilege and catastrophe in rapid succession. Born April 14, 1930, he grows up in the Berghof compound, where his father controls access to the Führer. Young Martin attends elite Nazi schools and serves as a Hitler Youth squad leader. April 30, 1945, his father vanishes during the breakout from Hitler's bunker. Soviet artillery shells rain on Berlin as the 12-year-old Martin and his mother Gerda flee westward with a column of refugees. May 1945, Allied forces capture the Bormann family near Berchtesgaden. Martin spends 14 months in a displaced persons camp near Munich, sharing quarters with children of other Nazi officials. His mother dies of cancer in March 1946, leaving Martin and his 9 siblings orphaned. Catholic charities separate the children and place them in different households across Bavaria. Martin goes to a farming family near Dachau that specializes in taking difficult cases. 48, Martin enrolls in seminary school at Eichstätt Diocese. He studies Latin, theology, and church history while concealing his identity as the son of Hitler's most trusted aide. June 14, 1953, Bishop Joseph Schreffer ordains Martin as Father Martin Bormann, making him the only child of a top Nazi to join the Catholic priesthood. He serves in rural parishes throughout Bavaria, working with poor farmers and immigrant laborers. His parishioners know him as a quiet priest who never discusses his past. 58, Martin requests missionary assignment to the Congo. The Vatican approves his transfer to Leopoldville, where he works among lepers and establishes medical clinics in remote villages. He spends 12 years in Africa, learning 4 local languages and training indigenous medical workers. His supervisors recommend him for bishop status, but Martin declines promotion. He returns to Germany in 1971 and serves as a parish priest in Oberammergau until his retirement in 1992. March 11th, 2013, Martin Bormann dies at age 82 in a Munich hospital. His death certificate lists his profession as priest and makes no reference to his parentage. Vatican records show he donated his inheritance from Bormann family properties to Holocaust survivor organizations in Israel and Poland. The donations total 1.7 million Deutsche Marks, transferred anonymously through Swiss bank accounts between 1955 and 1989. The children of SS medical personnel carry unique burdens of knowledge and complicity. Sigmund Rascher Jr. grows up knowing his father conducts high-altitude experiments on prisoners at Dachau concentration camp. Dr. Sigmund Rascher Sr. subjects inmates to pressure chambers that simulate altitudes of 68,000 feet, recording their convulsions and death agonies for Luftwaffe research. Young Sigmund, born 1933, often visits his father's laboratory and observes experiments through observation windows. April 26, 1945, Heinrich Himmler orders Dr. Rascher's arrest for financial irregularities and false academic credentials. SS guards execute him at Dachau on the same tables where he conducted his experiments. Sigmund Jr., age 12, witnesses his father's arrest but not the execution. May 2, 1945, U.S. forces liberate Dachau and find Dr. Rascher's research files, including photographs of his experiments and film footage of prisoner deaths. War crimes. Investigators interview young Sigmund for 6 hours at Bad Aibling Interrogation Center. The boy describes watching pressure experiments and recalls his father explaining the scientific purposes of the research. Investigators note that Sigmund shows no emotional response when viewing photographs of dead prisoners. August 1945. Catholics. Charities place him with a foster family in Rosenheim that specializes in disturbed children. Sigmund struggles with behavioral problems throughout adolescence. He attacks other children, tortures animals, and shows fascination with medical procedures. In 1951, his foster parents commit him to a psychiatric facility near Würzburg after he attempts to perform surgery on a neighbor's cat. Doctors diagnose him with conduct disorder and antisocial tendencies. He remains institutionalized for 3 years, receiving electroshock therapy and drug treatments. 54. Sigmund gains release at age 21 and enrolls in technical college to study electrical engineering. He graduates with mediocre marks and finds work as a technician for a medical equipment manufacturer in Stuttgart. His colleagues describe him as competent but strange, with an unsettling habit of staring during conversations. 1962, he marries a nurse named Helga who knows nothing of his background. They have no children. December 3rd, 1989, Sigmund suffers a stroke at his workplace and dies en route to Stuttgart General Hospital. His widow discovers a locked cabinet in their basement containing hundreds of photographs from Dachau medical experiments, including images of his father's research subjects. Helga burns the photographs and scatters the ashes in the Neckar River. She tells police her husband never discussed his childhood. The daughters of SS officers navigate different challenges of identity and disclosure. Etta Goering, daughter of Reich Marshal Hermann Goering, represents the highest profile case of Nazi legacy management. Born June 2, 1938, she spends her early childhood in luxury at Cairn Hall Estate, where her father displays stolen art and exotic animals. October 15, 1946, Hermann Goering swallows cyanide in his Nuremberg prison cell, cheating the hangman by 2 hours. Emmy Goering, Etta's mother, faces immediate financial collapse. Allied authorities seize Cairn Hall Estate and arrest Emmy for possessing stolen artwork. Etta, age 8, moves between relatives and temporary guardians, while her mother serves 18 months in Landsberg prison. 1948. Mother and daughter reunite in a small apartment in Munich, living on welfare payments and occasional secretarial work. Etta attends public schools under close observation from child psychologists who monitor her adjustment and political development. Teachers report that she shows above-average intelligence but displays troubling attachment to Nazi symbols and ideology. 1954. At age 16, she defends her father's actions during a school debate about war crimes. The incident prompts a transfer to a private Catholic school with experience handling children from problematic backgrounds. 56. Etta enrolls at Munich University to study law, following her father's academic path. She excels in international law and writes her thesis on war crimes tribunals, examining legal precedents for command responsibility. Her professors praise her analytical skills while noting her tendency to argue that superior orders constitute valid legal defense. She graduates 1960 with honors and passes the bar examination on her first attempt. Etta practices family law in Munich, specializing in custody disputes and inheritance cases. She marries construction engineer Hans-Jürgen Jodl in 1967, taking his surname to escape the Goering identity. They have one daughter, born 1969, who grows up knowing nothing of her grandfather's identity. Etta tells her daughter that her grandfather died in a car accident during the war. When 85, author Gerald Posner contacts Etta for interviews about her father's legacy. She agrees to meet, but refuses to condemn Hermann Goering's actions or express regret for his role in Nazi crimes. "He was my father," she tells Posner. "I will not betray his memory for your books." The interviews terminate after 2 sessions when Etta learns that Posner plans to quote her defense of her father's wartime service. December 21st, 2018, Etta Goering dies at age 80 in a Munich nursing home. Her death certificate lists her as Etta Jodl, making no reference to her birth name. Estate records show she preserved hundreds of personal items from her father, including his Reich Marshal baton, medals, and personal correspondence with Hitler. Her daughter donates the collection to the Bavarian State Archives, with restrictions preventing public display for 50 years. The children of Auschwitz personnel carry the most specific burden of genocidal knowledge. Rudolf Höss Jr. grows up on the grounds of Auschwitz concentration camp, where his father serves as commandant from 1940 to 1943. The Höss family villa sits less than 100 meters from Crematorium Pointe, close enough that young Rudolf can smell the burning and hear the screaming from his bedroom window. His father explains the smoke is necessary industrial production for the war effort. Rudolf attends school in Oświęcim town with children of other SS families stationed at the camp. His teachers instruct students that the camp processes enemy populations for resettlement in the East. Rudolf believes this explanation until 1943, when he observes a group of naked women and children being driven toward the gas chambers with whips and dogs. That evening, he asks his father about what he witnessed. Rudolf Höss Sr. explains that some prisoners require special processing due to disease or security risks. January 17, 1945, Soviet forces approach Auschwitz as SS guards begin evacuating prisoners westward. The Höss family flees to their almost relative's farm near Gotto, carrying suitcases of personal possessions and camp records. May 11, 1946, British forces arrest Rudolf Höss Sr. at the farm, where he has been hiding under the false identity of Franz Lang. Young Rudolf watches through a barn window as soldiers place his father in handcuffs and load him into a military vehicle. April 16, 1947. Polish authorities execute Rudolf Höss Sr. by hanging at Auschwitz, using a gallows constructed specifically for his execution near Crematorium First. The execution takes place at the exact location where he oversaw the murder of over 1 million people. Young Rudolf, now 17, reads about his father's death in a newspaper headline, Auschwitz Commandant hanged. The article includes testimony from his father's trial describing the gas chamber operations in clinical detail. Rudolf attempts suicide that evening by drinking agricultural pesticide, but survives after emergency medical treatment. He spends 6 months in psychiatric care at a facility near Hamburg, where doctors diagnose him with severe depression and guilt complex related to his father's crimes. Treatment includes group therapy with other children of Nazi war criminals, but Rudolf refuses to participate in discussions. 48, Rudolf changes his surname to Heine and enrolls in agricultural college near Hanover. He studies crop management and livestock breeding, focusing on practical skills that require minimal human interaction. His professors describe him as diligent but withdrawn, with an unusual aversion to discussions about German history or politics. He graduates in 1951 and finds work as a farm manager for a large estate in Lower Saxony. 444, Rudolf marries Anna, a widow with 2 young children who knows nothing of his background. He adopts her children, and they have 1 son together in 1956. Rudolf works the same farm for 32 years, expanding its operations and earning recognition as an innovative agricultural manager. His family knows him as a quiet man who suffers from recurring nightmares and refuses to discuss his childhood. February 8, 1987, Rudolf suffers a heart attack while inspecting cattle in a winter pasture. He dies en route to Hanover General Hospital at age 57. Anna discovers a locked metal box in their attic containing photographs from Auschwitz, including images of his father in SS uniform and documents showing the family's residence at the camp. She burns the contents and never tells her children about their stepfather's origins. The most extreme case of identity transformation involves Klaus Barbie's son. Klaus Altman Jr. grows up believing his father works as a businessman in Bolivia, unaware that Klaus Barbie earned the nickname Butcher of Lion for torturing French resistance fighters during the German occupation. Born La Paz, Bolivia, 1947, Klaus Jr. attends German language schools and speaks fluent Spanish and German, but no French. 93, French authorities extradite Klaus Barbie from Bolivia to stand trial for crimes against humanity. Klaus Jr., now 36, learns his father's true identity from television news reports showing his arrest at El Alto Airport. The reports include footage of Barbie's wartime activities and testimony from torture survivors describing his interrogation methods at Montluc prison. Klaus Jr. immediately changes his surname to Meyer and moves from La Paz to Santa Cruz, where he operates a small import business specializing in German machinery. He marries a local woman and has 3 children who grow up knowing their grandfather only as Abuelo Klaus, who died when they were young. Klaus tells his children that his father worked for a German company in La Paz and died in a car accident. July 4th, 1987, French courts sentence Klaus Barbie to life imprisonment for crimes against humanity. Klaus Jr. follows the trial through newspaper reports, but never visits his father in prison or corresponds with him. July 25th, 1991, Klaus Barbie dies of cancer at Lyon Corbus prison at age 77. Prison records show he received no visits from family members during his 4 years of incarceration. Klaus Jr. continues his import business in Santa Cruz until his death from diabetes complications in 2008. His children discover his true identity only when settling his estate and finding German documents in his name. They burn the documents and continue using the Meyer surname. The youngest child, Maria Meyer, works as a teacher in Santa Cruz and tells her students that her family came from Germany to work in agriculture. The pattern of concealment extends across generations as grandchildren inherit fragmented histories and buried truths. 1995, the son of an SS officer discovers a cache of documents hidden behind a false wall in his deceased father's basement. The papers include SS service records, photographs from occupied Poland, and letters describing mass executions in detail. He reads his father's account of shooting civilians near Brześć and learns that his quiet, religious father participated in killing over 300 people in a single day. The discovery triggers a psychological crisis that requires professional intervention. The son enters therapy but struggles with guilt over his father's crimes and anger over decades of deception. He considers making the documents public, but ultimately decides to burn them to protect his own children from the knowledge. He tells his therapist, "Some truths are too heavy for the next generation to carry." 2003, German prosecutors open investigations into several cases where children of Nazi war criminals concealed evidence or helped their parents evade justice. The statute of limitations has expired for most crimes, but prosecutors examine whether post-war assistance constituted obstruction of justice. Files show that at least 47 children provided false alibis, destroyed documents, or helped their parents obtain false identity papers between 1945 and 1960. The investigations reveal a systematic network of family assistance that enabled war criminals to escape prosecution. Children served as couriers carrying messages between hiding fugitives and sympathetic networks. They transported money, documents, and personal effects across occupied zones. Some helped establish rat lines that smuggled Nazi officials to South America. Prosecutors note that most children acted from filial loyalty rather than ideological commitment, but their assistance prolonged the evasion of justice for decades. 10. The Simon Wiesenthal Center publishes a study tracking the fates of children from Nazi leadership families. The research identifies 342 children of SS officers above the rank of Sturmbannführer, following their post-war trajectories through marriage records, employment documents, and immigration files. The study finds that 67% changed their surnames, 34% emigrated to other countries, and 23% eventually returned to Germany under new identities. The statistical analysis reveals patterns of professional distribution among the children. 28% entered technical or engineering fields, 19% became teachers or academics, 15% worked in commerce or trade, 12% joined religious orders or social services, and 8% pursued military or police careers. The report notes that children who witnessed violence firsthand showed higher rates of psychological problems and social isolation compared to those who experienced only indirect exposure to their parents' crimes. The report also documents 23 cases where children actively opposed their parents' legacy through public statements, charitable work, or cooperation with historical research. These individuals typically experienced longer periods of post-war detention, received more extensive denazification education, and had sustained contact with survivors or resistance members. Their public testimonies provide crucial documentation of Nazi family dynamics and the intergenerational transmission of guilt. April 15th, 2020. The last surviving child of a major SS leader dies at age 93 in a nursing home near Frankfurt. Her death certificate lists her as Maria Hoffmann, but records show she was born Ilse Kramer, daughter of SS Oberführer Heinrich Kramer, who commanded Einsatzgruppe C in Ukraine. She spent 75 years living under her married name, working as a librarian, and raising 4 children who never learned their grandfather's identity. Her estate includes a sealed envelope with instructions that it be opened only after her death. The envelope contains a confession describing her knowledge of her father's wartime activities and her decision to conceal his identity from her children and grandchildren. She writes, "I carried the secret alone so that innocence could survive in the next generation. Some burdens should die with those who bear them." The confession reveals that she witnessed her father's return from mass shooting operations in 1942, observing his blood-stained uniform and hearing his drunken descriptions of killing actions near Babi Yar. She describes her struggle with inherited guilt and her decision to donate anonymously to Holocaust memorial organizations throughout her adult life. The donations total over 400,000 euros, funded through careful savings and investment of her modest librarian salary. Her final words reframe 75 years of silence. "I chose forgetting over remembering, silence over truth, and perhaps that choice condemned the innocent as much as it protected them." The confession sits in Frankfurt City archives, sealed for 25 years per her final instructions, joining thousands of similar documents that contain the last testimonies of a generation that lived between complicity and conscience, inheritance and escape. The children scattered, but the documents remain,